Hey VC, this is Luke with Hot Wax and Cool Vinyl. Welcome back and Happy New Year. It's been 5 months since I did a video, so certainly about time. First video of this year is going to be Vinyl Tag 2021. So without further ado, I've got the questions written down, albums ready to be shown, all except for one. So we'll start. So the first question, I'm going to cheat, because if I don't read them, I have no idea. So the first question is a discovery of for 2020. Most of the discovery is going to be in the jazz section, and sure enough, I'm going to show Ben Webster, was an artist I was not familiar with. Chris over at First Pressing Goodness showed this album on his channel, and I saw it and I was intrigued by it, so I did some research. I really started liking what I heard from Ben Webster, and so I went and got it. So from there, I'm going to do a little bit more in his catalog. I've got a few more things. But yes, so this was a discovery for 2020. Very pleased discovery at that. Second question is a quarantine buy. Very much like a lot of you, I'm guessing there was quite a few. For you, I did as well, but I'm going to go with Half Speed Remastered Meatloaf Bat Outta Hell for this year. This was amongst several, but the one that I wanted to show. So, Half Speed Remastered Meatloaf Bat Outta Hell. On to the next one, which is a box set. I have a couple of box sets, not a ton, but I do have a couple. And there was a couple to pick from, but I think one of the cooler ones is the Motown Story. This is a 5-record set. It's got 58 songs on it all together. It's nicely done, nicely laid out. This did come with a booklet. Unfortunately, when I bought this copy at the thrift store, it was missing. So when I get around to basically finding another copy of this or something along those lines with the complete booklet, I'll get that too. But box set, we're going to go with the Motown Story. Next one was a concept album. God, there's so many of them. And I haven't seen a lot of the 2020 vinyl tags. I try not to until I do mine. But my guess is probably almost everyone, or quite a few, did Sgt. Pepper's and a few other odds and ends. So didn't really want to do what I thought everyone else might do. So I kind of went a little bit off. But I did choose David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Whether it's a concept album, I guess, could probably be a little debatable. I don't think so. I think it was a pretty interesting concept album from Bowie. So that's what I went with. Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. The next one was a album band that changed direction. And this one was a really little bit more complicated than I expected it to be. But I wound up going with Blondie's Parallel Lines. The album before this was Plastic Letters, and that was a much more, it came out the year prior, so Plastic Letters was still a Blondie, more of a hard-driving pseudo-punk / punk, not quite new wave-ish yet. And then Parallel Lines came out, and it was a pop, new wave, disco sound. Really nothing, very, very different sound for Blondie than they had done to that point. Much more commercial, much more polished, and certainly got the airplay and the recognition with Heart of Glass. breaking it into the top. So I use this as my album. Which was it again? This was the album that changed direction for a band. They went from more of a punk band to much more of a pop radio-friendly band. No, don't misunderstand. I like Parallel Lines. I do prefer You to the Beat, but Parallel Lines is good too. White label promo. Have a couple. I don't know how many, but I have a few. But I decided to go with one of my favorites, which is Frank Sinatra, Strangers in the Night. I have 2 copies of this, but this is my white label promo copy on Reprise Records, and it's mono as well. So I was pretty, I was pretty happy when I found this at one of our local yard sales. So the next is a compilation album. This one I went with a little bit off. It's a soundtrack, but it's still a compilation album, realistically, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to take a little liberty on that, only because it's one of my favorite albums. It was one of my grails, and still remains one, because I have to get a little bit of a better copy. But The Warriors. You know, great record. Lots of good music on it. Great artwork on the cover. This could have gone for the other ones, one of the other questions as well, but I chose to slide it into here. So on my compilation album, we're going to go with the Warriors soundtrack. The next is an album that tells a story. Oh man, it's kind of an obvious one, but it could have been, you know, Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell, because that tells a story as well, but I was going to use that as my buy. So anyway, I decided that I was going to choose Pink Floyd's The Wall. Also because I don't feel right not putting Pink Floyd into a vinyl tag or a video when there's so many questions, and it's got to be, you know, Pink Floyd's got to be in there somewhere. And so Pink Floyd's The Wall for an album that tells a story. Not a particularly happy story, but it is a story. All right. The next is an album that needs a vinyl pressing. So this run was really tough. I really haven't gotten into a lot of the newer bands. I'm still kind of filling in that area of my collections, because I'm still backfilling the albums from my youth, and then I got into jazz, so that area kind of fell by the wayside. But I did have one that I really think needs a vinyl pressing, and that's Janus. I think I've shown this once before. I bought this year. This is a 3 CD set. Has the booklet on it. It's really a great set, and it could certainly use a box set in album form. So, you know, hey, Columbia, if you're listening, how about giving us one of these? Next up, and again, I'm going to cheat it, and I'm looking at my sheet. A common and uncommon album. So, Aerosmith's Toys in the Attic. You know, pretty much find it anywhere and everywhere. And, you know, inexpensively as well. Not very hard to find, not very difficult to find. So, on the uncommon side, now I had a couple, and I was gonna, you know, take this or that, but I really wanted to choose an uncommon album that is A, hard to find and uncommon, but B, is also kind of obscure, so you can hopefully check it out when you, after you see this, you might give it a second and check it out. And that is the Fabulous Poodles. Now, this is Mirror Stars. This was the US version of it. The British version on Pi is actually labeled, titled something else. I don't recall what it is. But this is uncommon for two reasons. Leaving aside that it's a promo, but it's also on pink vinyl. And it's a great album. It's a compilation album as well, but it's really just it's a great album. British new wave power punk band, late 70s. Just a really interesting sound. A lot of very similar to the British sound of the era, but great record. Get a chance to grab one. They're not common, but when you do find them, they're also not terribly expensive because the Poodles weren't exactly a super well-known band and they're not super rare. So yeah, you can get your hands on it for $5 as opposed to, say, you know, a first pressing of XYZ album is going to set you back 150 to $200. So moving on. The EP, I believe it was. Yes, EP. Don't have a lot of EPs. Very few, actually. So we're going to go with, in this particular case, Rush Vital Signs. Yeah, you know, just never really was into EPs very much. Moving on. The next one is a girl group. The Go-Go's I had, but I did see Bill from the Vinylverse use that, so I wasn't going to go with the Go-Go's. The other all-female group I have that is not soloist like Aretha or a duet with two female singers would be the Runaways. So I'm going to choose the Runaways on this. Also, they're a Long Island band, so they get extra props from me because they were a local band, and I absolutely adore Joan Jett. Lita Ford's not half bad either, but Joan Jett is just, as far as I'm concerned, just fantastic. So, a fantastic rocker, just to be completely clear. So, Runaways, Joan Jett. The next one is an album that an album cover you love. So there's a lot. You know, there's Boston, which is over there. There is Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell, which was a great piece of artwork. And so I kind of was going to grab those, or any Molly Hatchet album for that matter. But I think when I was actually going through the records that I was considering, the one that actually stayed with me after I thumbed through them was this one, and this is, again, it's a compilation, easily not of any significant value or renown, but it is Soundproof, The Sounds of Tomorrow Today. And I happen to be a huge sci-fi nerd in so many different aspects. I mean, from Star Trek to Star Wars to 1960s B-movies, sci-fi B-movies that I absolutely adored, and so forth and so on. So when I bought this album, and I guess the reason I chose it, I bought it specifically for the artwork on the cover. And when I was going through the records and my record collection, I'm trying to pick one out for this particular aspect of the vinyl tags, I said, yeah, all those albums that you were looking at were great. Meatloaf and Molly Hatchet, etc., and Boston, which I'm going to show next. But you didn't buy any of them just because the album cover was really cool. This you did. And then so I guess that was the one that kind of said, okay, yeah, we're going to show this one. So, album cover artwork that I really, really dig and I enjoy. The Sounds of Tomorrow Today, Soundproof Records. Great little cover. For you B-movie nerds, you know how cool that is. So next one up is, what is that one? Album cover. The album you've listened to the most. Again, real tough. But I'm going to take a page out of Bill's book. Bill said we were assuming that you probably meant Lifetime. And for all of you who know me really well, it's not London Calling. And I'll tell you why it's not London Calling. Not because I haven't listened to London Calling a ton of times, but because Boston's debut album, if I have to be honest, I listen to more with the caveat because it's a single. You know, when I hear listen to an album, I'm talking complete album. So if it's a 2-record set, we're talking both records. So I probably listened to Boston's debut album more than London Calling. But again, only because it's a single, not a double. If it was just, you know, if this was a double album, it would have probably been something else. But this album, again, what can I say? I've said it 100 times. It's as close to a perfect album, in my humble opinion, as you can get. There isn't a bad track on the record. It's just a phenomenal piece of work from the first track all the way through. So, album you listen to the most, and I'm showing my age because I'm very, very old, is Boston's debut album. Next one is an album you have to get an OG copy of. There's a ton of them. From Small Faces on down, but I had to narrow it down some, and so I did. And this was something, discovery, that I found through Bradley over at William Now, and he is a jazz aficionado, and he turned me on to Art Pepper. And so from there, it kind of went, and I started collecting his catalog. And one of the records, this was a reissue, but it's Chet Baker and Art Pepper Playboys. This is a great reissue. It's 180 gram, French press, really, really wonderfully sounding album. But I really want to get my hands on an OG press of this album. They're not terribly expensive. They're not as common as you would think, but nonetheless, they're not as uncommon as you would think. But I haven't gotten a chance to as of yet. There's always something that comes up. So I'd like to get an OG copy of Chet Baker and Art Pepper's Playboys, and just put that in a record bin and just keep playing this because this just sounds so fantastic. So that's the other one. What's that? The last album you purchased. God, it's been a while. I thought about that. I mean, the last album I purchased was probably about 2 months ago, when I was in Pittsburgh, visiting my daughter. We went to a half-price bookstore, and they had a couple of records, and I don't recall which one I bought first or second, but one was an Italian record that really, and the other one was this one, and I was really excited when I got it. More American Graffiti, 2-record set. Again, it's a comp. I was very surprised to know that they had made a sequel to American Graffiti. I had no idea. And American Graffiti is a movie that I really, really enjoyed, but I truly had no idea they made a sequel to it. So they did, and it's called American Graffiti, More American Graffiti. And I bought the album, and it's got a ton of great songs on it, as you would expect from that era. But it's really disappointing. Quality is meh. There's a lot of voiceover because it's in the movies. There's a lot of voiceovers from Wolfman Jack, which normally I adore listening to the Wolfman Jack. One of my local stations does a replay of his radio shows when he was still DJing, when he was still alive. But still, on a record, the voiceover doesn't quite do the same thing. But I mean, it was a relatively inexpensive buy, just a little disappointing from what I was expecting. So that was the last album I bought, which was More American Graffiti. Next up, show a punk album. Oh, I'm sorry, an album they don't get. I didn't find it, but I have it somewhere, and it's not in alphabetical order as it should be. So God only knows where it is amongst in my record closet at this point. But I was just thinking about this 2 months ago when talking to a buddy of mine, and that's the album by the Dead Kennedys called Frankenchrist. And it's the Dead Kennedys are what they are. But one of the things that they really do is they're non-apologetic in their writing for pointing out certain things that in the United States that we probably could do better in. And a lot of, and it gets lost because the music is just the artwork on the album, the poster was, everything about it was just like, oh man, and the music is very, very strong, so it's easy to kind of just get lost in the periphery and miss out on the music. So that's one of the albums they don't get. Dead Kennedys, Frankenchrist. Dead Kennedys, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables is another one, etc., etc., etc. And you basically pick a DK album, they don't get it. Not that I always do, but I appreciate the writing style of Jello Biafra, Klaus Fluoride, etc. So on to the next one, which is a punk album. You guys know, me. I was tempted to show something other than the Clash, but then I was like, yeah, no. So here is Clash's debut album. This is a UK pressing. Cool thing about the UK pressing versus the US pressing was there was just some subtlety changes on the covers. Although the album covers were the same, the Clash logo on this one is on this corner. In the US pressing, it's above here. It's above on the top hand side. The back of the albums has got some slight variations as well, but it's this is my Show My Punk album. Honorable mention to any of the Ramones albums that I have, any of the Dead Kennedys albums that I have, and some of the other lesser known punk bands that probably, from 7 Seconds on, the bands that didn't have a whole lot of success, but somehow or other wound up in my collection. I'm not quite sure why. I don't really listen to them very much, but they're there and they stay there. So finally, which is your favorite 2020 reissue. I don't know if this was a 2020 reissue. I think it was. But hell, I was happy to get it. I got it in 2020, so it's going to go with that. And that is Bat Out of Hell 2 from Meatloaf. It's a great album. It's not as good as the original by any stretch of the imagination. The original was just a brilliant piece of writing from Steinman. But this is pretty good. This is really pretty good. I was unaware of the release until just this year, so I grabbed it when it came up on Amazon. Of course, my Amazon account, and it said, "Hey, Luke, you like this, man? So how about this?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you, please." So this was my favorite 2020 reissue. So that concludes my Vinyl Tag 2021. Again, it's been 5 months since I did a video, a fact of which I was reminded by my dear friend in Finland, Mr. Finglish. I am sorry, buddy. I did get your email, and I will contact. I'll email you back shortly. It's just been one of those things where I always mean to do it right away, and then for whatever reason I get distracted because I have the attention span of a squirrel. And so that's basically how that happens. So have a great week. Hopefully we're going to have a great year. Hopefully. Fingers crossed, everybody. But Happy New Year to everybody once again. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you like what you've seen, if you like some of my other videos. I always try to subscribe back in kind. So have a great day, have a great week, have a great year. Cheers!